Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John. I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book. As you can see, usually when we start these, it's just me on the screen, but we are having some tech difficulties and everything's working now, so we're not going to mess with it. We're going to let it just keep going. So I'm going to do my general announcements real quick. So first up, if you haven't come to visit us in a while, please come check us out at the store. We are still doing virtual author events through the rest of 2021. But in 2022, we are starting to get some stuff on the books. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Actually, if you peek at the January and February website, you might see a few things. It'll either say in-store or virtual. So we'll kind of give you a preview of what's going on. I also wanted to mention real quick, our first actual in-store event that we will be hosting since Deanna Raybourn visited us in March of last year is going to be on Saturday, November 27th. We're going to be doing our Murder by the Book Recommends event. We're going to do one at 11 and one at 1 o'clock for Small Business Saturday. So if you guys have not seen those before, it's basically the staff kind of sitting around talking about our favorite books of the year, some holiday gift ideas, things like that. So we hope that you will come and check that out with us. Which is, it's funny, I can't believe that it's been since March of 2020 since we've had authors in the store. And the last time we got to see Deanna, because we usually get to see her every year, and it's just been virtual.
I know.
So tonight, while she and Nicole are chatting, if you guys have questions for either of them about the new book, previous books, any of that stuff, please post those in the live chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook, and I will relay those. But to get us started tonight, we're super excited to be joined by Nicole Glover. The second book in her Murder and Magic series just came out on Tuesday. It's called The Undertakers. And Nicole works as a UX researcher in Virginia. She believes that libraries are magical places and that problems seem smaller with a cup of tea in hand. Her life outside of books includes bicycles, video games, and baking the perfect banana bread. The Conductors was her debut novel, and you can find her at nicole-glover.com. And as I mentioned, we're so excited to have Deanna Raybourn with us tonight to lead the conversation. We're always happy to get to do stuff with Deanna, and I'm so excited to hear Nicole talk about her series as well. So Deanna's most recent book is An Unexpected Peril, which came out in March. We were lucky enough to get to do a virtual event with her and Tasha Alexander. So if you go back to the store's YouTube channel, scroll back to March, you'll be able to catch that if you want to hear her talk a little bit more specifically about that one. And for those of you who may not know, Deanna Raybourn is the author of the award-winning New York Times bestselling Lady Julia Gray series, as well as the USA Today bestselling and Edgar-nominated Veronica Speedwell Mysteries, as well as several standalone works. So as I mentioned, if you guys have questions for either author tonight, please post those in the comments and we will get to those in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to Deanna and Nicole and let them chat, and I will see you guys in just a little bit.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks.
I am so happy to meet you because usually I do these events with people that I have gotten to know, and this is the first time we've ever interacted. So this is extremely cool for me. And this is going to be this is all about Nicole. This is all about Nicole tonight because I'm super excited because Undertakers just dropped this week.
Yes.
So this is release week for you. This is the week in which you're fated. Now, you and I have not gotten to meet in person yet, but I did read the first book. I blurbed the first book because I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It was so fresh. It was such a different spin on a murder mystery. Now, set the stage. So for people who maybe have not read The Conductors or who are a little bit foggy about what happened, because it's been, when did it come out?
March of this year.
March of this year. Okay. So.
Which is 2 years ago.
The quarantine. Years ago. So bring people up to speed if they need a little refresher on who Hetty and Benji are and what they're up to and what Philadelphia is like in your hands.
All right. The basic premise is we have these two former Underground Railroad conductors, Hetty and Benji Rhodes, married couple. They decided that after the war, they're going to solve murder mysteries in Philadelphia because that's their jam. And they're going to do it with magic because that's part of their skill sets. And the Conductors, this is basically an introduction to their world, what their mystery and the core mystery of them solving the death of close friends. The Undertakers carries along that similar premise, setting it a couple months after the Conductors, but it's it's not a self-contained mystery. It deals mostly within their community of a well-known teacher that gets murdered by through it. It seems like it's a solved case because it's like a fire and everything like that. They slowly unravel it to figure out what's going on. The Undertakers, even though it's part of the series, it can be read pretty much standalone. I think I do a pretty good job of setting the stage, so you don't have any too many lingering things. There might be like a few little spoilers, but nothing. I try to do my best to keep everyone up to speed for certain things.
And that's actually a really tricky thing to do. Is when you're writing a series to figure out how much you tell of what's happened in previous books, so you can set the stage, but you don't want to give too many spoilers away. Yeah. Because if somebody starts off with the Undertakers, you want them to go back, enjoy it. So a lot of people think that there is a sophomore curse, that this, and it's a widely held convention that the second novel is the hardest one to write. Right. Was it for you? Was the Undertakers harder for you than Conductors, or did you just slide right in there and get it done?
There's two different ways. On one hand, it's really easy because I took a lot of I was writing both books at the same time, more or less. I got a 2-book deal. So I basically, when I was editing the Conductors, anything I cut was like, let's use this for the second book, basically.
Okay, cheating.
Yeah, I guess so. But on the other hand, but it still was kind of hard because I wrote the very first draft to my editor was basically like November 2019. I turned that stuff in. And then I guess, I kind of basically sent that. I sent off this book, work on the other one. Then, to the 2020s happened basically. And even though the books kind of didn't change, it's, I was a different mindset than I was beforehand. But that's the hard part. And I guess, but at the same time, it was easier because I was like, I'm building this. I got to have more fun with this book because I did all the ground setting in the first book. So I get to expand certain things. That was kind of fun. But I guess the only harder part, I guess the other thing was when I'm drafting the second book was like, I'm remembering the pristine, fully edited first book, and I'm messing with this messy draft that's like not coming together because it's the first draft or I'm working on it. It's not there yet. So
it is so easy to lose your way and to think, compare when you're making the sausage to what the finished banquet was like the first time and just think, oh, well, I've lost it. I'm crap now. And getting past that can be a really tricky thing. How did you come to write the Conductors in the first place and establish Hetty and Benji and their world? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, the book is a combination of all the things that interest me, like history, mysteries, fantasy. All those things always intrigued me, particularly this time period. And it's basically the gist of the story. It's kind of started off as a short story. It's Conductors, they're working the road, and that's just an idea I had for a while, but it didn't really go anywhere until I decided let's add magic to it, let's add murder to it, and these kind of characters kind of came out from that different ideas and all those different things. And as I did research to kind of flesh out the history side of things, certain qualities that the characters came about as Hetty became a storyteller, someone collected all the folklore, who collected the songs, and different things like that. Benji became a blacksmith because of all the connotations, the power of of importance that blacksmith had in that time period, and in certain communities to be able to mix and tinker with certain things, and the mystery solving aspect of it, of I'm more interested of the tying along with funeral homes, all that kind of came out of the research. And it was a bunch of things that came at once and just kind of pulled together with all the different things I had at the time.
Okay, so you just led me so beautifully into a question that I had for you, which is, so writing cross genre is a really tricky juggling act. And most cross-genre authors will combine 2 genres. You're tackling 3.
Yes.
That is a big damn deal. I mean, you've got mystery and history, and then you throw magic in on top of that. So you've got a bit of a fantasy element too. How do you characterize the books? You characterize them as mysteries, don't you?
I think I lead with fantasy.
You lead with fantasy. That is fascinating to me. Okay.
Yeah, because the magic is the most, I guess the magic is the key part to me. It's the hook that got me really into having fun with the book, having propelled me into writing it. And I've always, I guess, mostly because I've always been a fantasy reader. So I guess I lead with fantasy more or less. with it.
That is fascinating to me. And I guess it's because like a homing pigeon, I always go back to mystery. So for me, the first thing I was looking at going, oh, these are clearly mysteries, but they have a magical element. So I find it really intriguing that you go magic. Of course, it's magic. Yes. But that's the great thing about a cross genre book is the fact that it will appeal. They're so much harder to market. So a lot of publishers hate them. A lot of publicists hate them. A lot of the marketing people are like, don't do this to us. But readers really seem to love them because you'll get fantasy readers who say, oh, I don't read mystery, but this will be a way in for me. I will totally do this. So do you find it really hard to juggle all of the elements, or does that just come from a place of flow for you?
I guess it's really easy. I guess because I think the history aspect of it is the setting. It's like, it's the world basically. So I kind of divorce it that way. The mystery element is like the plot drive, the engine for the plot. Because I guess when I set up the story, I think of the mystery. It's like it's like the steel rod of the story, and everything else, the subplots, all the character work, is everything goes around it, and the magic is everything that I guess ties together to bring in, like, from this. Adding into the world, adding into the plot elements together. So it makes sense to me. I guess I see it all working together as one. Nothing is they're not separate elements. They're all working together for me. So
if the book is the body, the mystery is the skeleton.
Yes.
And then your plot and your characters are your flesh, and then your magic would be your heart's blood. That's the thing that circulates in the heart and keeps it all together. So
that's the apt metaphor.
That makes sense. Okay, so I have a really soft spot for couples who work together in mystery series in particular. So let's talk a little bit about Hetty and Benji and how you developed their dynamic, because how do you see their relationship? Do you see them as equals? Do you see them as full partners? How does that work in your mind?
Yes, they're equal partners. They're the characters that popped up the same time when they had started this idea of the story. They are always there as partners, and I always love the dynamic of especially the couples working together, going against the world, going against the just bring all the different problems out there, but figuring out how to work well together and play off their strengths and weaknesses. I'm a sucker for a lot of little romance subplots out there, and I just love seeing how people work together and how that sometimes even the tension of the relationship can be like a part of of part of the plot issue, not necessarily them separating or anything like that, but just finding the strength of what's the best way to say it? It's finding the strength of the good opinions of each other and trying to work well together, and it's just fun for me to write couples. And I think in all the stories I've read, I like the dynamics at the end of the day. So
I love that. And there's obviously this very deep connection between them, which is lovely to kind of see play out and kind of wonder where that's going to go and how it's going to be tested, and if it's going to be tested, because that's always a question when you're dealing with couples long term. Although Benji and Hetty, we start off with them, they are together. That's already established. But when we ever come in, which is actually kind of unusual for a series, usually it's about the getting together. But for Hetty and Benji, it's more about how they move through the challenges that come up. And the challenges aren't so much relationship as they are what everybody else is throwing at them. Yeah. And whatever else they have to deal with.
Yeah, I think for me is since I was coming to writing them, I was like, they're going to be together at the end of the day. So why start at the end where I can start beginning with them already together and play around with that? And that I guess that appealed to me because I think I know in some of my early drafts I did have the typical let's have them slowly get of that art, the typical romance of they working together and eventually get to at the end. But that was, I guess I wanted to, because I was looking at their personalities, of them being very practical, wanting to. And also looking at where they stand in the community, basically, of them being in a kind of a respectable part of the community that would want to, there would be like, rumors of them if they weren't like married together, like trying to solve mysteries. And I thought maybe what if they already were, because Hetty was very practical about this sort of thing. They're good friends, like they're partners already. So like, why not just get married for the convenience of it? And just have that basically basically they get married so they can solve mysteries together. That's the mindset I went into it, and like then having them involve that relationship throughout the Conductors was part of the fun for me to add that. I guess to have your cake and eat it, so to speak. So they're already together, but I can still have fun with all the typical romance stuff. And the Undertakers allows me to kind of carry on seeing how their dynamic is like now that they're on the more romantic side of things, and kind of play around with that and just have fun with them just being cute and coupley, but still, having like blasting away things with magic and solving mysteries and kicking ass together, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And that's, well, and it's fun for readers too, because of the fact that there's, I write burns that are so slow that it takes half a dozen books before they even kiss sometimes. And so I'm sure readers really enjoy the fact that with Hetty and Benji, like things are much more to the point a lot earlier on. So you mentioned practicality, and one of the things I find really interesting is that these people are magic, but their day jobs are very practical. They're very pragmatic. We've got a dressmaker. We've got an undertaker with one of our secondary characters. We've got Benji's a blacksmith. You've got a teacher and a cook, and a potion maker is pretty esoteric. But if you think of that in terms of like an apothecary or, it's still a very practical, magical occupation. I love the fact that you've got them in these very, very grounded jobs that they do, and yet there's an element of magic to it. How did you work that you decided to give them very, like nobody's off teaching at Hogwarts? I mean, that's not the kind of world you've given them. It's a very different kind of fantasy world. So how did that decision making come about for you, that you decided to make them that kind of practical and grounded?
It's one level, it's looking at the historical side of things, like what are the typical jobs within the community this time period. And it's also looking at it's looking at what can be like magic side of different things. Even though like Hetty's a dressmaker, she sews spells into her clothing, into stitches. Like Benji will, he'll mend magical items or add like star sigils for enchantments and whatnot. And even the other jobs of like the other friends of being like teachers and undertakers and everything like that. There's still some level of magic that can be weaved into it. And like even though like the job with the potions is it's a typical it's probably the most magical, overtly magical one. But I was still looking at it like they're selling the herbs and supplies basically. And I think in that also level thinking like how do I want these kind of jobs to kind of play into like the mysteries part of some mystery side of things as well. And some of them I do more overtly because it's mostly why one of their friends he's an embalmer, he's an undertaker person, because that's a role you definitely want to have when you're solving mysteries and on the side and stuff. I think it's all this I guess it's one of the things that kind of came naturally, and also looking at the personality of the secondary characters, because like the one character is like a teacher, he's the most pragmatic of them all, to the point where he's the one always butting heads with Hetty because they're so polar opposites. And so I was looking at all different ways like that.
Well, I think it's true when you're trying to create a cast of supporting characters, especially who are going to help you solve mysteries. It helps to have a cook because they know what's going on with everybody, and it helps to have like the elder who knows everything, and because we've got Bernice, who's practically I always think of Bernice as like an oracle. Who knows a lot of stuff, but is not necessarily going to be super forthcoming about the information. And it helps to when you have somebody younger who's running around, who's apprenticing and brings kind of goes and finds out. And so it's fascinating to me to see how you've adapted a lot of these characters that most of us use some variety or other when we're creating a mystery, and how you've adapted them to this world, because on the one hand, the world is it's very specific. It's, you know, Philadelphia right after the Civil War. It's got a very good grounding in actual history that we can look at and say we know exactly what happened. But then when you add the magical element to it, and you put that twist in there, and basically whatever you want to happen can happen. But I feel you making an effort to kind of make sure that, like, I can read between the lines and tell, oh, she wanted this to be as accurate as possible with this magical twist put in it, as opposed to creating a world from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, you've got this setting that is extremely specific, that you are doing an amazing job of conjuring up and then kind of lighting on fire with this magical element.
Yes. Yeah, it was very important to me when I made the choice of making it on the historical side to like be as historical as accurate as possible. I mean, the magic gives me some leeway to kind of make not everything exactly, but I wanted to give a sense. This is give a good sense for anyone to come into it. This is very historical accurate as possible, and it was a big choice because I could easily make this a secondary world where, you know, it's an entirely different kind of world, but it's all these different, like you said, deliberate choices to make certain things, and it also allows me to kind of reflect the history side with the certain present moments of certain things, kind of parallel, and also have fun with some what ifs for certain things, of like what, even just overtly of seeing like how this magic will interplay with certain elements of the world.
And again, like anybody would think that we had discussed these ahead of time, because you keep like feeding me into my next questions, which is just fantastic for me. So the whole point of these books is that Hetty and Benji are looking to bring justice to people who the system does not serve, and who are overlooked by the system or actively harmed by the system, which taps so neatly into the zeitgeist that, I mean, you could not have planned that better. So I'm wondering, like, did you plan it? Is that where that came from? Or is this something that you've been thinking about and it just happened that you published it at a time where it was so timely?
I think it's part of it. I know I first started writing this in 2015, which was shortly after the shooting in Charleston. And that was on my mind in the very first draft of the Conductors. And I guess certain elements, especially as I did more research into this time period and looking at the Reconstruction era and seeing like so many parallels to the modern day, like you could literally change dates and names and places, and all this writing at that time could still be applicable now. So I guess all that kind of this feeds into the kind of the story, even though I'm not like trying to overtly think about it, but just I guess if you absorb so many different things, it always comes out in your writing in the end of the day.
Oh, it absolutely does. And it's absolutely true what you're saying. And anything that's coming about through history rolls up again and again. Unless people work really, really hard to fix it. I mean, I was shocked to find that there was one book I was researching, and I mean, there are unhoused people living in tent cities in Trafalgar Square. And as soon as Jack the Ripper starts killing people, all the newspapers are full of, oh, it's the foreigners. Oh, it's and it's all the same things that people are screaming about today. And you're like, wow, nothing changes, which in a way is dispiriting. And in another way is like, okay, at least I've got universal things that I can talk about here that people are going to say, okay, I feel that. It's historical, but I feel that. So what surprised you the most then when you were researching, when you were kind of doing your deep dive into Philadelphia and Reconstruction era, any of that?
Yeah, there's certain details, like from just learning more about how vibrant the free Black community in Philadelphia, how long it's been around since like the days of the Revolutionary War, and just a big, sizable community that's been doing things, was actively involved in the Ground Railroad. And all those different things like that, and learning things in the period right after Reconstruction, in the Reconstruction era, like from all the mutual aid societies to burial societies to all the literacy agents, the literacy clubs, basically glorified book clubs. One tidbit I found was about like friendship albums that they'd share, that a lot of the women would share between their friends, where they would draw like little draw things, leave notes, basically like kind of like a portable like social media thing. They would literally pass around. Yeah, they pass around these albums, And that was like a thing I just found by accident. And then it's so like that became like a nice climax for the subplot and the Conductors with the friends as a thing, as a little artifact to use. Yeah, just all these little details that just makes all the things you don't read about in history it shows how people lived throughout the world at that time period. So those are things that kind of really fascinate me. That's things I end up trying to pull into the books, like even like just random tidbits, like with the Undertakers in particular, was the Beale ciphers really caught my interest when I was like going deep dive into ciphers and clues. And this Beale cipher, things like a mystery of some buried treasure and like, a potential pamphlet with all these codes and potential being buried somewhere. And like, that's like, it's the idea of this being an historical mystery and that's just really intrigued me. And it's some things I like to try to bring into my story. Like with some, of course, with alterations that fit the world and stuff and things like that.
So the magic element, because we've talked about the history element and we've talked a little bit about your characters. I want to talk about the magic element for just a second, because I am absolutely fascinated, because the idea now, like you said, when you've got a magic element, the world is the biggest of oysters. You can do literally anything you want. So I think the idea of choosing a really very specific historical setting is absolutely genius, because you give yourself some limitations and some parameters to work within. But even within that, there's so much you can do. So how did you decide, like, first of all, where did you go to do your research? What kind of research did you do on the magical side? And then how did you decide what to incorporate of that and what to kind of just leave on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, I didn't do too much of looking into the magic systems, because like I said, I've been a big fantasy reader. So I'm familiar like with what systems are out there, what people do with them, how like big and expansive, how small they are. And I was thinking, so I kind of took it to where basically I looked into like what I want magic to do in the world. Basically, do I want them to raise the dead? Do I want them like you do like illusions? Right. So I'm thinking like, how do I want it to function? How do I want it to function particularly with mystery solving aspect of it? Because so I basically kind of limit to like they do certain interactions with the world. Basically, they can make things move. They can like make papers fly around. They can make protection spells basically, or in the case for the mystery solving, they can they can draw up these like little star dogs more or less drawn for like Canis Minor, and they have them sniff around for magic and all those different things like that. And that's how I kind of approached that certain things. I went to the constellations, to astronomy and astrology, because those are things I really loved, and they also kind of draw into like the mythos, particularly around the Underground Railroad because of the North Star, using stars for navigation, and those themes all tied really neatly. On top of the fact that constellations are really fun to imagine coming to life for the story.
You did a beautiful job working all the stars in there, and I knew you liked astrology. I mean that was super obvious, and you and I are both Geminis, so yes. I'm totally feeling this. Because I love the star work was just, I mean, to me, that's just a lovely, lovely element to be able to work with and to bring into the magic. So I was completely digging that. Okay. So in your day-to-day life, you're a UX researcher.
Yes.
What is that like? Explain what you do on a daily basis when you're not making magic on the page. What are you doing? What is Nicole Glover up to?
I'm the person influencing you when you're on the app, when you're on the website, where they click this button, look at these certain pages, keep staying on these website and apps as long as possible. I basically kind of I look at behavior information, basically how people are engaged in these different things, like whether they're clicking, whether they're not clicking, whether they're bouncing out. And I just, I'll do research stuff. I'll like go test out the designs. I'll help the people, all the code, the developers and art designers to figure out like what looks good, what doesn't look good, and run surveys, bring in we have people actually test certain things, and just do research on comparing like what the best method is, looking at the competitors, and a bunch of fun things like that. I always call the UX, the research side is like a baby. It's a baby between like psychology, design, and tech.
Oh, that's a great way to kind of conjure a little metaphor for it. How much of it translates to your writing? Do you find any overlap at all? Anything useful from your work skills that you can incorporate in that kind of help you get through your writing and shape it? How does that work?
a lot of the, I guess, the human behavior aspect of things, like knowing how people don't read certain things or how quick they react or different things like that. And of course, the large element of research side of things, because I've always loved doing research and collecting information. So that made it really easy when I had to research for my books, to where to pull, how in depth to get, and knowing when to pull back. Because you can go you can dive and stay in these research rabbit holes forever and ever. But knowing when you got enough information to start to work with is the kind of the skill set I kind of learned over the years.
So what's your favorite way to research? Do you like to do just the online stuff solely, or do you like to go in person and kind of dig through primary sources? What's your jam?
I'm a big person of using libraries, so I like to pull as many books of relevant topics as possible. I might do a keyword search of like certain things, like, sometimes it's specific things, like, light bulbs or something, like there are tunnels or ciphers, and I kind of bridge out from there. Then kind of go just figure out how deep I want to go with it, or find things that spark my imagination. Certain things. Sometimes it's not even sometimes it's like I'm not even looking at something directly. It might be something like, oh, this passage right here like sparks my imagination for certain things, or just certain elements, and certain things. And depending on how in depth I want to get in a certain topic, I'll go deeper. I'll go look for primary sources. I'll look for newspaper articles. I know there was a time I was around looking at some newspaper articles for certain things, just to find out the gist of what's going on, or just looking for just things that might have popped up, more daily stuff or different things like that. And I know I do a lot of collection of this. I always keep my eye out for research, because even though I do a lot of this stuff, things always kind of pop up, and it always kind of feel bad. Like after I know I'm done, I finished the Conductors. Like I found some stuff like that popped up randomly in my radar, like that I was like, I could have gone in the book, or it's like, then me freaking out. It's like, it's not accurate because I didn't have this in here. But yeah, that's how it goes.
Oh, I feel that so hard. I mean, anything I'm reading is fair game. Any little snippet of information that pops up, any documentary I'm watching, like everything is fair game. So what's a perfect writing day for you? How do you settle down? Do you have any rituals? What do you do?
Since I work throughout the day, so sometimes I'll have notes. Usually I make notes around lunchtime about like certain scenes or things I want to write. And basically when I get home, in evening time, I'll start basically just turn those notes to scenes. Basically, I try to, when I'm drafting, I'll have a certain word count I want to hit. But when I'm revising, it's different. Like it's more of I focus more on the certain scenes and like trying to get the right feel for certain things, and just make sure everything flows around. It's like I guess it's different. It's hard to say what's the perfect writing day. I guess the perfect writing day is like for me, it's like when I have a scene I'm struggling with, like for one day or several different writing sessions, and suddenly just something clicks and all comes together. Or those are the days where when I'm deep in revisions, like this is revision 3 or 4, I'm trying to reconfigure the novel to where I want it to be. Then I'm literally rearranging scenes from the back to the front and forwards and back, all the different ways. And that suddenly it just comes together, or I have this idea that fixes everything like that. And sometimes even the best days are the days I might delete like 5,000 words because I no longer need it. And it makes the book better for that. So different days, different writing days, it's different ways for me. It's not really about the word count at the end of the day for me, but sometimes, because even though it's like nice to have like those days you hit 5,000 words, but a lot of times it's more me to getting certain ideas to click and come together. That makes me really happy. Or those days when I'm like working the scene and I'm literally clapping to myself because I made this change and it just works perfectly, or this idea for this just snippet of dialogue just comes to me and everything's so much better, even though I still have a lot of work to do with it.
Nicole, that is the most Gemini answer I have ever heard, because I felt every bit of that. Yeah, it's absolutely true, because a perfect day will vary depending on what you're looking for out of that particular day. And sometimes it can be, I only wrote 100 words, but I fixed this massive problem. Or like you said, if you end up cutting a couple thousand words and the book is shorter, but suddenly it works better because you tightened everything up and
Yes.
you know, everything just sort of falls into place. So yeah, I feel that in my marrow. So how far have you plotted out this series? Do you have more books in the pipeline? Do you have a goal of where you'd like to go, or is this just kind of see how far you can roll with it?
I have 2 good ideas for 2 more books. There's some things that came up that it seems like it'd be really good fun with it. I'm a fan of series that have like they don't go on forever. I don't think I probably could, and I guess if I and I probably could. They'd have enough ideas, but I like limits to myself with certain things. I have lots of other ideas for different books and different worlds. So it's like, even though I really love these characters, love these worlds, I think it's more of a piece by piece, I guess. But I know I can say that I at least have 2 good ideas for 2 more books that I really love to get a chance to really dive into. And yeah, I guess with anything, I guess I always have different stuff I always like to work on too. So who knows?
Do you have a lot of books tucked away, like in the attic or under the bed, that you have finished the book but it didn't get published?
Well, I mentioned a few. Like before the Conductors, I wrote a few books. Some of them that I even tried to seriously queried at one point. One was a steampunk novel, which was like I think the last thing I wrote directly before the Conductors, which you can kind of see some inspiration because I did some historical research for the steampunk stuff. I had a superhero novel. I had when it was fun. It was more of a casual, like they ran like event planning company for superheroes basically. And one of the main characters was a retired. Yeah, it was a lot of fun with that one. I think I did something with a fairy tale thing. It was like a retelling of like a high fantasy fairy tale stuff, taking all the fairy tales I'm not too fond with and switching them around. And like little things like that. I always had these little bubbles of different ideas. And yeah, I think I attempted to write scripts, screenplays, and film stuff because there's a different medium way to tell stories and different things like that. But yeah, lots of different things, and even things I'm working on now, just that just taking the things I really like, I really enjoy looking at or wanting to work with different spaces. A lot of times it's even like seeing something out there in the world already and being like, I could do this better, I could do this differently, and trying my hand at it, see how it goes.
So what would be your dream project out of all those? If somebody came to you and said, Nicole, have a massive amount of money and sit around and write what you want to write, what would you probably run for first? What would be your first choice to get your claws into?
Really? I don't know where to start, but I guess probably the superhero mode. They run an vending plant company is like some kind of like a multi-season thing, is a kind of cozy little thing. But I don't know. There's also the high fantasy stuff that'd be kind of fun. I don't know. Pretty much any idea I had, I was like, let's do them all basically.
I think it all sounds like fun.
Yeah,
that superhero event planning thing. I want somebody to option that right now. I need that as a series.
Yeah.
A little, we need something to watch now that Ted Lasso is done for the season. So let's get that going. I think that sounds like great fun. So what would you like to do for Hetty and Benji?
I guess I help like is like a. I'm trying to figure out like the limits for this question. There's so many ways I could take it.
There's no limit whatsoever. You take it however you want to take it, as a couple or as sleuths, or what would you like to do with them?
Yeah, I just kind of keep doing what I'm doing of exploring, just having them doing fun mysteries together, and not. Yeah, just kind of exploring the world, and even having them face some more like typical like mystery tropes that I want to kind of play around with. Because I think I'm thinking like how about having seen them like in a mystery manner and having them running around doing different things like that. And I guess even like contextually outside of like the book itself, seeing them at stories that adapt into different mediums be kind of fun. I know I got news. I got the first book I optioned for for film rights basically earlier this year. It makes me excited to see, like, you know, goes by Queen Latifah and Jim Henson Company. They optioned it for
why
film.
are we just now talking about this?
Okay. Yeah, let's
we
see.
should have talked about. I did not know this. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me everything.
Yeah, it happened really quickly, and it's really exciting. It was really exciting. You know, it's
amazing news. That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay,
basically,
and say again.
Yeah.
Queen Latifah.
And Queen Latifah and the Jim Henson Company.
And the Jim Henson Company. That's amazing.
Yeah, they optioned it for film. Yes, like I was mostly excited because these are names I know and recognize, and other people recognize too. Because a lot of times when you say like you get optioned by such and such companies, you know, most people in your life won't know them, but these two names, people know them, and that made me really excited, and even more excited to see people I know, like, you know, fans of that. You know, they read my book, they liked it enough to option it and stuff like that.
And, Nicole, that is wonderful. And I don't know how I missed this, but that is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. So where are they in the process? Are they working on screenplay probably at this point? Or finding a writer?
I don't know too much. I know it's like early stages, like, you know, pitching, finding a writer, getting things set up. But I don't know. I'm not too involved with it. So, but as long as I get a ticket to the movie premiere or whatever, I'm good. Because that means that, you know, actually coming to life.
That is so exciting. Okay, so one of the things that I absolutely love most is on your web, and I love the book. I also love on your website the artwork. There is this magnificent gallery. So anybody who's read Nicole's stuff or wants to read it, you have got to go to her website. And it's not NicoleGlover.com. It's Nicole-Glover.com. Because you are not the jazz singer who is the first hit with that. You are Nicole Glover. And there is a tab that you can click on, which will give you the most gorgeous art of all of the characters. It's Hetty and Benji, and it's a whole raft of secondary characters too. How did the art come about? If you tell me you drew it yourself, then I'm clicking out of here and I'm leaving right now because I cannot with that. That is too much talent in one woman. I can't.
No, I'm not that good of an artist. I had reached out to someone for my big thing is, for any writers, you want to see your characters drawn and stuff like that. So I've always followed these artists on social media, you know, looking around, admiring their artwork, you know, coveting, like seeing they have the commissions open and certain things like that. And I happened to come across this artist, Deanna Raybourn. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. She happened to have commissions open at a particular point of time. And I was like, this is the point I had, you know, I had some lot of leeway before the books came out. I was like, let's commission these things. And I was thinking, like, you know, clue and mysteries are always like a big thing in my mind. So like, what we make these character art looking like, you know, like the clue cards basically. So I had character art done with them, as well as some weapons of like in-world potential weapons. I was looking back on it, only like one of them is kind of magical related, but that's okay. But yeah, the artist was totally game on working, like having like the concept and everything like that. And I gave her some like certain details, like, you know, about the character's personality, certain things like that. But all the gorgeous details about the clothes, the hair, the styling, positioning of certain objects, that was all her. It's like she just blew my mind, like she was reading my mind. And it's just amazing every time she came up an update with different things like that. And I loved all of it, like the color schemes, everything. It was great. And I know some of the little details even inspired me when I went back to revision to kind of update some of the little stuff in there, because it worked. It was so inspiring just to see like my stuff like coming to life in that sense. And
they're fantastic.
Yes.
Because even somebody that maybe you have a different picture in your mind of what this character looks like, you click on it and say, well, obviously I was wrong, because that's what they're so spot on, and they're so beautifully done. And now I want like a graphic novel version of it with these illustrations in it, because they're so good. So now this is the meanest question that you can ask a writer on release week is, are you working on the next book yet?
I'm always liking having ideas. I'm kicking around with it. So basically making I guess they call it like a proto draft version of certain things. Well, everything's fresh. But I have some other stuff. I wrote some different things early this year. Another book I actually just finished at the end of October, just as for fun, yes, as I like to do. I like to stay busy. for fun. Yeah, it's mostly because this idea was just so random stuff together, and I'm still like I'm basically letting that book simmer as I figure out all the kinks in it. So I'm just working out some of this, working on these different things. Like I like to, I have I like, and since also when I get ideas for different things, I like to write things out. So I basically say I'm working on a version of a book, potential book 3, that at least want to have like an idea of certain things, where things go, making sure it's a good idea and making sure it makes all sense to me. So like I always like to write. I'm always working on something, whether it's short term or long term or not. I guess I don't know, maybe because since I have the full-time jobs, I feel like my writing time is limited. So I gotta use the best as possible. So I'm always looking for the next project, basically like a shark. I'm always writing.
That is a perfect metaphor. All right, so we are almost to the end of the questions that I've prepped, and I want to make sure that we get time, because I'm sure we've got questions rolling in from YouTube and Facebook. So let's check in with John if he wants to pop back on here. There he is.
Hi.
Hello, my love.
Hello.
So, do you have some questions popping in for us?
Yes.
Because we can take a break now and answer some of those.
Yeah. And so before we get into those, Deanna, you have been so great to lead the chat. Can you tell everybody just a little bit about Veronica?
Sure. Veronica Speedwell. As John said, I moved to the book, which is why I keep pointing in the wrong direction. The study is being revamped right now, so nothing is where it's supposed to be. An Unexpected Peril came out last March. It is book 6 in the Veronica Speedwell Victorian mystery series. Veronica is a lepidopterist, which is a fancy word for butterfly hunter. And she collects butterflies and corpses, as you do. And she's got a really hunky sidekick. And as John said, they've been nominated for an Edgar, and they sell well, and people say nice things about them. So if you want a signed copy, Murder by the Book can probably hook you up with some of the titles signed, and definitely all of the titles with an autograph or not. And the next one is coming out. An Impossible Imposter will be. Thank you. I didn't know the day. Will be out in February, and Murder by the Book can hook you up with those pre-orders. So thank you for that. But it's the Nicole Glover hour. So we're going to go back to talking about Nicole Glover
hour. Yes. And I will mention, last thing about Deanna, we are chatting with her publicist about a virtual event when the new one comes out. So keep an eye out for that. That's how I knew exactly what the date was, because I was just emailing with Lauren in the last couple of days. So Nicole, you have touched on this a little bit, but Robin says, I love the constellations as the sigils for their magic. What inspired you for that? Do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, it's a lot of the visual component. I'm a very visual person, so I love the idea of seeing these constellations being transformed into different things. And also a big thing is constellations. Everyone has a different view of these constellations. You look around the world, everyone has these different constellation systems that they shape these stars different ways. And it's another thing I was thinking about with this magic is sometimes even if they use the same constellation, like a Canis Minor, for example, a small dog. And they might have different dogs that might appear when they draw these things, like a terrier, or a greyhound, or all those different things like that. So it's the visual thing. It's a lot of fun for me. And it's my love of stars and all that comes with it.
Perfect. Thank you. And so Robin also wants to know, are those the 4 covers for the series on the wall behind you? I know the US and the UK have had really different covers. So can you talk a little bit about the process between the differences in those? See, these are the US and UK covers both. It's differently. I gave some ideas for the US covers as the things I'd like to see on there, but seeing magic, seeing the characters on the book, as certain elements that I mentioned. The UK's I wasn't too much with. I didn't give too many notes. I don't know if they communicated or got inspired by each other. But I like the synergy between them, because if you look at both pairs of the sets, you see some similar images corresponding on it, which is really fun. And I always kind of want the lantern on the covers. I was really happy that lantern's made on both in the US covers, because that's a big symbol somewhat with it. And of course the birds and all the constellations, things like that. So one of the things that we always ask British authors, but I don't know that I've ever actually gotten to ask it the other way. So we always ask British authors when they're going through the edit process with their American editors, do they have to go in and say like, oh no, this is too British. Can you like change like bin to garbage can, things like that? Did it go the other way? Was there any point where they were like, no, this is too American. You have to explain this so British people will understand?
No, they literally just took the same manuscript and just reprinted with different cover. So no edits on my part. Easy for me.
Awesome. How about you, Deanna? Do you ever have to go in and do any like, oh, let me make this more British for
no,
the
it's never been an issue. And right now I'm being translated into Ukrainian, so I hope they don't have questions because man, I would say my Ukrainian is rusty, but the truth is it's non-existent. So I am no help.
So Melanie wants to know, we'll start with Nicole and we'll pitch this one to Deanna as well. But so Nicole, what was the strangest or most fascinating or most esoteric research rabbit hole or Google search that you found yourself doing for either of the books?
I would definitely say the underground tunnels that I found. I started out, it actually wasn't even related to the books to begin with. I got interested in subways, underground system, trains. And then it was like, and I came across a passage saying, you know, they might have used these things throughout the Underground Railroad activities to move people up north to freedom. And it's like, oh, is this true? Is it possible? And I started figuring out how much is fact and fiction and deciding how much do I want it? Do I really care if it's fact or fiction or not? And use it in my book anyway.
How about you, Deanna? What's a good random esoteric research rabbit hole that you've gone down?
Oh, you know, the ongoing one for me is poison. Because it started with my very first Julia Gray book, and still I will, you know, that's my safety spot. Like I'll run back home to poison all the time. I just got 4 new poison books. I'm so excited. And just figuring out how they work because of the fact that I'm not a botanist. I now follow a couple toxicologists on Twitter, and it's like it absolutely makes my day because one of them will make up cases and he's like, you know, can you guess what the poison was? And yesterday I was like, strychnine. Like I got it. I was so excited. And following like the Duchess of Northumberland at Alnwick Castle has built a poison garden. And like that's my landscaping goals right there. I want a poison garden. Yeah. So yeah, that's my rabbit hole.
And so Nicole, you mentioned early when you guys were chatting that you're a big fantasy reader. Who are some of your favorite writers?
It changes a lot. I think a lot of one of my current favorites are like Rebecca Roanhorse, Paige Jelly Clark, or some big ones I'm really like at the moment. Mary Robinette Kowal's A Lady Astronaut series is a big fan for me because since I'm all into NASA and stars. I remember reading the first book in the series, being like, I know all these resources that she had in the biography at the end. Like I read all these resources, and so I was like, yeah, this is totally what I wanted. So yeah. It changed a lot. I don't have too many favorites, but I love recent faves I've been following.
And how about mysteries? Who are some of your, since you clearly are a big fan of mysteries as well, who are some of your like go-to mystery authors?
Well, it's cheating to say Deanna is one of the ones I got really into recently. And there's also a lot of the classic ones as well. Like, you know, just the Agatha Christie, the Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that. Just a lot of, I think I just read a lot of generic mysteries I came across as a kid, and it's like that had a little mystery symbol on the library and stuff as well. But yeah, it's anything goes. As long as I'm more intrigued by like how odd the mystery might be, or whether it's, or sometimes, I mean, it also leans more to historical mystery instead of like contemporary mysteries for some reason. I'll read for some, it's odd. I know I read more historical mysteries than like anything that happens like modern day for some reason.
We actually, our historical mystery section is our best-selling section in the store of all of the subgenres, and I'm sure, and I'm sure a good part of that is because I think a lot of the staff tend to read a lot more. So generally, if we're going to go put something in somebody's hands, it's probably going to be historical that we go to. But that's definitely one of our best-selling sections. So Deanna, have you mentioned also being a fantasy reader, and you played a little bit with Gothic with the Dead Travel Fast, but have you ever been tempted to do any kind of fantasy writing?
No. That is I actually, I mean, I barely read fantasy. I probably read like maybe one fantasy novel every 2 or 3 years. So that is like, I enjoyed, and that's why I looked at Nicole's when I was offered the opportunity to read the arc of the first one. I was like, this is a little bit outside my wheelhouse, but I'm super intrigued. And then she just made it work so flawlessly and so seamlessly. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I think in the hands of a lesser writer, that would have been a really, really hard thing to pull off and to do well. Because on the one hand, like, mystery is so, it's so logical and so linear, and fantasy is so loose and you know, so imaginative, that combining those two, because a lot of times people tend to prefer one or the other when they read. And she just did a superb job of combining both of those things in a way that I think was a lot harder than she realizes, because the rest of us are sitting here going, how did you do that? How did you do that, Nicole? That's really hard.
And now, you guys, I know you were talking earlier about kind of those cross-genre books or books that kind of do that. And I'm a big fan of those as a reader and also as a bookseller, because like Deanna said, it's always great to find something that's like that much out of somebody's wheelhouse and say, oh, you really like great historical mysteries. Here, this one has a little bit of a fantasy element to it. And like, then people potentially pick it up and read it and like it. And it's always a fun way to kind of like stretch people's reading comfort zones a little bit, but not so much that they're like, where did all these elves come from? This isn't what I want. It's always nice to have those like books that push it just enough so that way you still have those familiar things that you love in a book. So I'm always big
they're the gateway drugs.
Yeah. All right. So I think that is going to just about do it for this evening. But Deanna, since I think that's going to do it for Croc Questions, was there anything else that you had on your question list that you didn't get to that you wanted to ask before we head out?
No, the only thing I was going to ask was a book recommendation for Nicole of what she's reading now and what she's loving and could probably be ordered from Murder by the Book. So,
I don't know what I'm reading right now. I guess I'm actually finishing out a Master of Jen by P. Dale Clark. That's his most recent book right now that I'm going through, and I guess most it's a hard answer because I'm doing a lot of like nonfiction reading for research.
It's also release week. No one actually expects you to be reading for pleasure this week.
Right. So then, Deanna, on your end, what's something that you've read lately that you love that you would recommend?
Sherry Thomas's latest in the Lady Sherlock series, Miss Moriarty, I presume, came out last week. And I'm super excited because I'm just getting ready to start the arc of Stephen Spotswood's Murder Under Her Skin, which is the sequel to Fortune Favors the Dead. And I loved that book. It's Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin, but picture them as women in the 1940s. And the books are fantastic. I love them. So very excited. Stephen Spotswood's book comes out in December. So,
and we are just working on nailing down a moderator for him. So we will be doing a virtual event for him as well. And
it's a night that I cannot join you. And I was gutted. I know, because I was like, that would be super fun. But no, so I know you guys are hosting Stephen Spotswood, so that's going to be a fun event. So folks can get their books from you.
Yeah, so that second one's in my stack too. I'm really hoping to get to it real soon. So to recap for everybody who might have joined us late, we have been chatting with Nicole Glover, whose second book, The Undertakers, which is the second in her Murder and Magic series, has just come out. The first one in the series is The Conductors. We have both of them available at the store, and I dropped a link early in the chat for those. And we've been chatting with...
Just buy both. Just buy both.
And we've been chatting with Deanna Raybourn, whose most recent release in Unexpected Peril came out in March. The paperback of it's going to be out just after the first of the year. And definitely keep an ear out on the Murder by the Book website for event info for Deanna for that one. If you missed any part of the chat once we are done, Facebook and YouTube will archive them, so you'll be able to go back and rewatch. While you're there, we hope that you will surf around and watch. We have done literally hundreds of these since the pandemic has started. So there's a great wealth. If it's a mystery author who has had a book out in the last year and a half, chances are you're going to find a chat with them on the YouTube channel. As I mentioned, you can also find one that we did with Deanna and Tasha Alexander and Lauren Willig last March. Nicole and Deanna, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your release, Nicole.
Thank you.
You guys have a good night, and we'll see you soon.
Sure. All right. Bye.